We are all curious creatures. We look, seek information, and learn. In fact, the act of looking isn't always a bad thing. However, the pleasure of secret observation naturally brings up the subject of voyeurism, which originally implies a deviant form of sexual behavior. But in general, voyeurism indicates our innate interest in looking at others' lives. Film viewing itself can be termed as a voyeuristic activity. At the same time, compelling movies are made out of humans' compulsion to look. The inquisitive nature of a character can tap into the rich vein of cinematic thrills. Besides, there is no guarantee that an act of looking will always provide gratification. There are heavy crosses to bear too. Now, let's not forget the other side of this privileged gaze: the misery and terror of those who are being watched. In our surveillance society, technology is widely used to monitor people's everyday activities. But the watcher is not always the unseen eye of technology. Those eyes can belong to a stranger, and whose act of watching can withhold a sinister motive. Chloe Okuno's thought thriller Watcher presents one such terrifying scenario. It portrays the uniquely female experiences of dread and paranoia, and explores how being a woman is scary in a world where violence against women is prevalent.
We become a race of peeping Toms. What people ought to do is get outside their own house and look in for a change.
In cinema, an act of looking invokes the sexual politics of gaze. Who sees, who is seen, and how they are seen, that matters. Actually, you don't have to be a gender studies major to comprehend the concepts of male gaze, first popularized by film theorist Laura Mulvey. Mulvey's argument about the objectification of women in media is now part of the common parlance and has led to the emergence of the more complex buzzword, female gaze. Take the works of the master of suspense, where the male gaze largely defines the storyline. The obsessive looking of the male watcher might lead to their downfall in some way. At the same time, these are narratives that favors male experiences while slyly reinforcing the notion that women exist only to please men and they only strive for domestic bliss. Watcher opens in the well-trod Hitchcock-ian ground, although the maker's influences ranges from Roman Polanski, Kieslowski to Satoshi Kon and Sofia Coppola. Most importantly, it projects a female eye over the male gaze. It illustrates Mulvey's intriguing argument of how women are often coded with to be looked atness. This is a recurring motif in Watcher, as the female protagonist, Julia's personhood is repeatedly reduced to how she looks.
If the threat isn't really overt or explicit, like, it still sort of wears on you after a while.
Yeah.
And something very simple and mundane can become your own personal horror movie. I feel like
Julia is an ex-actor who moves to Bucharest from New York with her partner due to his work. Julia's half-Romanian husband, Francis, is fluent in the language, but she isn't. And the first Romanian word she learns is
Frumoasă.
the result of a man looking at her.
Say you are beautiful. Frumoasă.
Frumoasă.
On the first night in their new apartment, Julia looks at a silhouetted figure in the building opposite theirs. She watches her watcher a couple more times before telling her husband. Julia is further unsettled when she hears the news of a local serial killer who is targeting women of her age. Earlier, when left alone, Julia wanders the city aimlessly. The cultural and language barrier adds an extra layer to her alienation. However, now even things as simple as walking down the street or sitting inside a cinema hall seems spooky. Soon, she encounters a creepy guy at the supermarket aisle. She believes he is that watcher. When Julia once again brings up that topic with Francis, the ensuing conversation leaves her ill at ease. It's not that he is downplaying her feelings with a malicious intent. He just can't get it. Francis does make efforts to alleviate Julia's anxiety, though it isn't enough. Julia also tries her best to communicate why she is petrified, but it's met with hasty rationalization.
Listen to me for a second. Even if it was him, the guy lives in our neighborhood. It's not crazy to think that he'd be shopping at the same store.
I need you to stop rationalizing this all away.
You want me to stop being rational, to just jump to the craziest conclusion like you?
Watcher isn't simply about exploring whether Julia's suspicion is valid or not. It shows a world where a woman is constantly looked at, but never taken seriously. Even Julia's fear of being watched and the feeling of being hunted is disturbingly reduced into a joke. Chloe Okuno stylizes the narrative in such a way where such often oppressive gaze remains pervasive. For instance, while accidentally stalking her stalker, Julia stumbles upon a strip club, a space where half-naked women gyrate in glassy cells to satiate male sexual desires. The frames are also filled with icy dread. Julia's state of mind and the underlying tension is made apparent through every aesthetic choice the filmmaker makes. Sleek modernity and urban decay parallelly exists in the former Iron Curtain nation. Moreover, this is the land of vampires, a clever metaphor for the monstrous voyeur. Okuno's highly subjective filmmaking consistently presents the asymmetrical nature of the gaze between Julia and others. Her gaze is often tinged with bafflement and terror. But the reasonable guy logically wonders who is watching who.
There, see? He's staring right at me.
Maybe, or
what?
Or he's staring at the woman who's staring at him.
Watcher might be criticized for sacrificing nuance in the later half as a clear-cut villain comes out of the shadows. Yet, the film succeeds in intimately showcasing the internalized fear women are forced to live with. The fear that cripples their entire self. The only positive note in Julia's chilling journey is her acquaintance with neighbor Irina, one that's born out of female solidarity. Irina validates her feelings and makes a pact with Julia. This bond between the women drives much of what happens later and eventually leads to a very dramatic yet satisfying catharsis.
Do I just sound paranoid?
Let's just hope you'll never find out. The best outcome might be having to live with the uncertainty. Better than getting raped and strangled and dying with the words "I told you so" on your lips, right?
She doesn't die with these words. But Julia emerges from the doorway, covered in blood, and her intense gaze conveys the same